Hello, all you Hellions, and welcome back. I've been on a real Fall of the House of Usher kick lately, and today is no different. My last video, we went over the first movie based after the short story filmed in 1928. This week, I am, at least for now, going to skip the movie filmed in 1950 and go to the movie filmed in 1960, titled House of Usher. I'm just going to skim the surface at first and give you the basic premise of this film. And then we are going to dive deep into the details of this story. Let's do this. We open with a solo rider traveling through barren land on horseback. This man's name is Philip Winthrop. He has arrived at the House of Usher. Philip is greeted at the door by Bristol, the valet. After learning that Philip is there to see Madeline Usher, Bristol says no one is allowed admittance by order of the master of the house, Roderick Usher. Philip demands to speak with Roderick, and Bristol takes him to Roderick's bedchamber. Roderick claims that Madeline cannot see him because she is confined to her bed with illness. He says this as Madeline walks in. Madeline convinces Roderick to let Philip stay.
He must stay, Roderick. Please let him stay, Roderick.
Very well, he will stay. Now, for pity's sake, return to your bed.
And Philip spends his time in this house trying to convince Madeline to leave with him. Madeline dies from her illness and is placed in the family crypt. Later on, Philip finds out that Madeline suffers from cataleptic fits. She may in fact not really be dead. When confronted with this knowledge, Roderick confesses that he did knowingly put Madeline, while living, in the grave. Madeline escapes her coffin, goes to Roderick, and kills him. There is a great storm blowing that opens a fissure, or crack, that was throughout the house. Philip makes it outside. He is the only survivor, and witnesses as the House of Usher crumbles into the Tarn, which is a small mountain lake that went right up to the house. This rendition hit on all the main points. The story is strong and intact. It's all the details that really make it stand out. So, let's go for a deep dive and look at the similarities and differences between this movie and the original short story written by Edgar Allan Poe in 1839. Let's start with the similarities, and for that, we will need to go back to the beginning of the movie. Philip does indeed arrive alone and on horseback. The land he travels through is bleak and barren, with an air both oppressive and melancholy, just like in the book. The house, as well, matches its description beautifully, described as being dark, gothic, and ominous. That is exactly what we see. The Tarn, or small mountain lake, that was spoken of in the book is also present. They had a very clever way of showing this. We see mist, low to the ground, surrounding the front of the house, and a small bridge to cross to get to the house. No CGI, you don't have to literally see it to know it's there. Love it. There is also a fissure or crack that is mentioned throughout the movie. In the book, it runs all the way down the front of the house. In the movie, it's throughout the house, but close enough. Philip is in fact taken to Roderick by the valet Bristol. We learn that Roderick and Madeline are siblings, although in the book they are twins. But that's a tiny change. Sticking to the book, they are the last of their bloodline. Roderick, like the rest of his family, is a very talented painter. We see multiple paintings done by his hand. He also plays the lute. In the book, it was a guitar, but that's splitting hairs.
Here. Is it your own work? It is.
And you also play the flute?
I do.
Roderick explains his maladies to Philip. He has extremely sensitive hearing. Any exaggerated sounds are unbearable. The same can be said for most fabrics. He is only able to stomach the most bland foods, and he is negatively affected by light and sounds. These afflictions have been passed down the family bloodline. He believes wholeheartedly that he and Madeline are dying. We now skip to the death of Madeline. Everything in between will be covered in the differences. A lot of artistic privilege was taken in the next scenes. Madeline is placed in her coffin and taken to a room in the deepest part of the house. This did happen in the book. Also, that one stormy night, Roderick admits that he has heard Madeline move since the night she was placed in her coffin, that she was, indeed, still alive. Madeline escapes her coffin and comes to Roderick's chamber, showing bloody signs of her struggle to escape her coffin. She kills Roderick. Philip escapes, the only survivor, and sees the storm open the fissure completely and watch the house fall into the tarn. And now for the differences. For this part, I will only speak of what was not in the book. For this, we once again go to the beginning. A man arrives alone on horseback. This is true. However, what is not shown is that he was summoned to the House of Usher with a letter. This letter was written by Roderick Usher himself because he and the recipient of the letter were boyhood friends. Roderick refers to him as his best and only friend. Roderick begs for his friend to come, for Roderick felt his own death was short in coming. Roderick felt his friend's natural cheerful nature would help ease his fear and melancholy. The friend is known as Philip Winthrop in the movie. However, in the book he is never given a name, so for the rest of this video I'll refer to him as the friend. The friend is greeted by the valet named Bristol, but, like the friend, the valet was never given a name. In the book, a doctor, also with no name, was in residence to care for the many maladies of Madeline, for which the cause of such maladies is unknown. The doctor is absent from the movie. Unlike the book, when the valet led the guest to see Roderick, he asked the guest to remove his shoes.
Your boots, sir. What about them?
Do you mind taking them off?
Taking them off? What on earth for?
Well, I'm sure Mr. Roderick will explain it to you, sir.
And gave him a pair that made no noise, a clever way to expound on Roderick's noise sensitivities. There are also two instances that happened to the guest that could have caused him harm: a falling chandelier and a popping fire.
What happened?
Both, Roderick explains, as the house being evil and trying to hurt him. In the book, the guest has a mere glimpse of Madeline, and only once, as she moved through a room he occupied, and she was never spoken of. Instead, the guest spent his time painting and reading with his friend to try and brighten his spirits. Roderick also played the guitar for the guest and sang a song of his own writing about a land that was once light and lush, and a grand home that had a grand ruler, until a darkness overtook the land and home, and all became dark, melancholy, and barren. None of this happened in the movie. In the movie, the guest comes to the house for his betrothed Madeline, who he met in Boston, and she was full of life. All the times we saw her in the movie simply did not happen. The guitar scene was also left out of the movie. We see Roderick strum a lute for a minute, but no song accompanied it. Roderick did tell a story, however, about how the grounds were once lush with life before a dark evil crept over the land. There was no talk of the ruler, but still, I'm happy they got that in here somehow. Another scene not in the book shows Madeline sleepwalking to the home's chapel. It is explained she always thinks about her own death and is found in this chapel often.
Wake her, sir. The shock could be very harmful.
How did she get here?
She walks in her sleep, sir.
And then she comes here?
She's obsessed by thoughts of death.
Madeline also shows the guest the family crypt, located in the deepest part of the house. Not only does it hold her departed relatives, but there are also coffins for her and Roderick as well.
My grandfather. My grandmother. My father. My mother.
This is monstrous. Whose idea was this, your dear brother's?
There's one for him, too.
Oh, Madeline, come away with me now.
She claims this is the reason she cannot leave with the guest, no matter how much she wants to, because the house and the deceased ushers are always waiting for her to take her place among them. And now for the added story from Roderick. He tells the guest that Madeline absolutely should not have children, that the Usher blood is tainted with malice and madness, that he and Madeline are the last and it should stay that way. Roderick goes on to show painted family portraits to the guest, explaining all that they had done. He said the house was brought over from England, and from all the evil thoughts and deeds committed here, the house itself is now evil. And that evil has passed to Madeline and himself.
Bernard Usher, swindler, forger, jewel thief, drug addict. Francis Usher, professional assassin. Vivian Usher, blackmailer, harlot, murderess. She died in the madhouse. Captain David Usher, smuggler, slave trader, mass murderer.
Roderick claims that 3/4 of the ushers were evil and driven mad. With this madness came terrifying, superhuman strength. The guest, having heard enough, goes to Madeline and tells her to pack her things. They are leaving tonight. She finally agrees. As the guest is packing, he hears an argument between the siblings. Madeline screams. The guest enters her room to find Madeline dead on her bed, Roderick standing nearby. Roderick claims that all the activity and excitement had been too much for Madeline and it killed her, and that the guest was indeed the cause of her death. During the viewing, which was also not in the book, Roderick notices Madeline's finger moving. Seeing this, he quickly has her placed in the family crypt, whereas in the book, Roderick is so distressed, he places Madeline in a temporary location, in the deepest part of the house underneath the guest quarters, in what used to be a dungeon. The following morning, the guest is ready to leave the House of Usher. He is convinced by the valet to have coffee and breakfast before starting his journey. Trying to ease the guilt the guest is feeling, the valet said it was not the guest that killed Madeline, but the Usher blood. They have many maladies that were passed down, including, as the valet accidentally admits, cataleptic trances. A person in the throes of cataleptic trances will remain in a fixed posture for prolonged periods of time. They lose voluntary motion and have reduced sensitivity to pain. In many cases, they appear dead.
What did you say?
Sir,
You said catalepsies?
did I, sir?
Is Madeline subject to cataleptic trances?
Oh, no, sir, not Miss Matt.
The truth!
In a panic, the guest runs to Roderick, who admits to knowingly burying Madeline alive. That she was already doomed and it was only a matter of time before her life would have been over. He states she had been alive but now has passed and refused to tell the guest of her location. The guest unsuccessfully tries to find her. Exhausted, he falls asleep and dreams of a funeral procession with the deceased ushers in attendance. This also is absent from the book. When the guest wakens, the valet warns that the fissure is growing bigger with the rising storm and the house could fall at any time. The guest once again goes to Roderick. He informs Roderick he plans to see him hang for the murder of Madeline. Roderick is unperturbed, says it would be a blessing to meet death. All the while, Roderick is distracted, seemingly hearing sounds that only he can hear. And then, in desperation, he cries out.
Be done!
To the guest's horror, Madeline is still alive. In the movie, Madeline is living in the coffin overnight. In the book, it is many nights. Once Madeline escapes her premature burial, she is in the grip of madness and finds her way to Roderick using many hidden passages throughout the house. The guest, having finally found her coffin open and empty, follows her bloody trail. The guest gets in her way and she attacks him. Twice. She ends these attacks only when she sees Roderick and instead goes after him. The fireplace lets out an ember and the house catches fire. Now, a little fun fact side note. When I was a child, we would go on big family camping trips several times a year. My sister and I would ask Dad to tell us a scary story most nights while on these trips. And quite often, he would tell us the story of the fall of the House of Usher. We loved this story. The first time he told it, he spoke of the part where Madeline throws aside her fiancé. This disturbed me and my young mind, because that just wasn't nice. Seeing my distress, Dad revised the scene and said she gently placed him to the side. Yeah. The valet, trying to stop the attack, has a burning beam drop and kill him. As Madeline is attacking Roderick, part of the burning roof falls and kills them as well. None of this, apart from Madeline attacking and killing Roderick, happened in the book. Madeline is not killed by a burning, falling roof. She goes down with the house as it falls into the tarn. So there you have it. As you can tell, there were many scenes added to the original story, and I can see why. The original short story is less than 30 pages, so additions were needed to fill a whole movie. And I gotta say, I loved them. The family background and the family crypt were all additions that show the madness that riddles the bloodline. I feel it was a great idea to bring Madeline up from a background character to be part of a main cast. To show the relationship between the siblings, I do, however, wish the doctor was in this movie, but that's not a deal breaker. And oh my goodness, the acting. Mark Damon plays Philip, Myrna Fahey is Madeline, and Harry Ellerby plays Bristol. All very solid actors who owned this movie. And of course, the late, great, amazingly talented Vincent Price. There's a reason I named my dog after him. He carries every movie he is a part of, and that voice, anything he touches turns to gold. So, obviously, this movie gets 5 coffins. I have greatly enjoyed this movie every time I have watched it. Highly recommended for any horror fan. Do yourself a favor, dive into the past, and watch it. Once again, thank you to all who watched this video. If you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe and see you next time. I will now end this with a clip of Vincent chewing ice.